in the sprawling megacity of Galaxius, where the neon lights never dim and the skyways are always bustling with traffic, there existed a dark underbelly few dared to acknowledge. Here, in the shadowy corners where the gleam of technology seldom reached, the less fortunate beings of the universe were traded like commodities. One such being was Threx, a member of the Yolak species, recognizable by their shimmering blue skin and delicate luminescent tendrils that flowed from their heads. These tendrils were not merely for show. They were sensory organs, capable of detecting subtle changes in the environment, a trait that made Yolaks highly coveted in the black market. Threx's journey to Galaxius was marked by despair. Abducted from his home planet during a raid by space pirates, he was sold into slavery. His captors cared little for his well-being, only for the profit he would bring at the market. For years, Threx served under various masters, each more cruel than the last, until he was finally left chained in a dark, damp cell beneath one of Galaxius's towering skyscrapers. As fate would have it, his cell was not to be his final dwelling. On a rainy night, when the downpour masked all other sounds, a lone figure stumbled upon the alley where Threx's prison was hidden. This figure was Dr. Ilara Miles, a human woman with a keen sense for the suffering of others. A scientist by trade, Ilara was in Galaxius for a conference, but her true passion lay in humanitarian efforts across the galaxy. Drawn by a faint, pained moaning, Ilara discovered the locked and guarded facility. Using a compact hacking device she always carried for emergencies, she managed to disable the security systems and slip inside. What she found was appalling. A dozen alien beings, each from different corners of the cosmos, shackled and malnourished. At the far end of the room she noticed Threx, whose eyes met hers with a mix of fear and hope. Acting quickly and silently, Ilara freed Threx from his chains. The touch of her hands was gentle, and her eyes bore a deep sadness for his plight. Threx, bewildered but sensing a genuine kindness, followed her lead. They sneaked through the corridors, avoiding guards and security droids, until they reached the back exit. Once outside, the rain had eased into a drizzle, casting the city in a surreal, glossy sheen. Ilara led Threx to a nearby safe house used by the Underground Network, a secret organization dedicated to combating the illegal slave trade. As they entered the safe house, Thrax was overwhelmed by the stark contrast between his dark cell and this place filled with warmth and soft light. Ilara introduced him to other members of the network, who welcomed him with open arms and promised protection and aid in finding a path to freedom. That night, as Threx lay in a real bed for the first time in what felt like forever, his mind was tumultuous. Gratitude for his unexpected freedom mingled with the trauma of his past. Yet amidst this storm of emotions, one thought stood out. How incredible it was that a human, a species often disregarded in the cosmic hierarchy, was the one to free him. As dawn broke over the city, casting its golden light through the windows of the safe house, Threx and Ilara sat together sipping warm beverages. Ilara shared her plans to help him seek asylum on a planet where slavery was not just illegal, but abhorred. Threx listened intently, his tendrils glowing softly in response to her kindness and the burgeoning hope within his heart. This was the beginning of a new chapter in his life, one filled with possibilities, all because one human dared to care when no one else would. In the heart of Galaxius's lesser-known district, known as the Fringe, Ilara and Threx navigated the dense crowds of beings from countless species, each going about their daily struggle to survive. The Fringe, a melting pot of cultures and species, was vibrant yet chaotic, with its market stalls displaying exotic goods and its air filled with a cacophony of languages. Threx, still adjusting to his newfound freedom, clung closely to Ilara, his tendrils subtly changing hues to reflect his anxiety and wonder. Ilara had arranged a meeting with an old ally, Captain Rael Zorin, a reputed figure among the starship community, and known for his discreet assistance to those in need. They found him at a makeshift cafe, a rugged and charming spot frequented by pilots and smugglers alike. "Ilara, it's been ages!" Rael exclaimed, his voice carrying over the din of the cafe. His gaze shifted to Threx, eyes narrowing slightly, not out of hostility but intrigue. "And who's this?" "This is Threx," Ilara replied, her tone gentle. "He's the reason I called you. We need to get him off Galaxius, away from the markets and the chains. Rael studied Threx for a moment longer, then nodded. I might know a few routes that can get him to sanctuary planets. It won't be easy, but it's doable. He pulled out a holo map, projecting routes that twisted and turned through less patrolled sectors. These are the paths least monitored by the galactic enforcers. If you're caught in one, though, it's a straight shot to the penal colonies. As they plotted their course, an urgent message pinged on Alara's device. She glanced at it, her face hardening. We have trouble. The slavers are onto us. They've tracked Threx to the fringe. The news hit like a cold wave. Rael's hand shot to his sidearm, a reflex born of years in dangerous skies. We need to move now, he declared, pushing back from the table. They hurried out of the cafe, blending into the crowd as best they could. Alara led them through narrow alleys and over crowded bridges, her knowledge of the city's underbelly proving invaluable. Threx, his senses heightened by fear, followed closely, relying entirely on Alara's expertise. Suddenly a shout cut through the noise of the crowd. A slaver had spotted them. Alara glanced back, her decision made in an instant. Split up, she commanded. Meet at the docks in 1 hour. Rael, take him! Rael grabbed Threx by the arm, pulling him into a sprint. Threx's heart pounded in his ears as they dodged through the masses, the shouts of their pursuers growing louder. They ducked into a service tunnel, the entrance hidden behind a row of refuse bins. Minutes felt like hours as they navigated the labyrinthine service routes beneath Galaxius. Finally, they emerged near the docks, where Rael's ship, a sleek vessel named the Nomad, was docked. They boarded swiftly, Rael sealing the hatch behind them. Strap in, he instructed as he rushed to the cockpit. Threx, unfamiliar with spacecraft, fumbled with the safety harness, his tendrils flickering wildly. As Rael powered up the engines, Alara's voice crackled over the comm. I'm on my way, she said, her tone tense but determined. Hold them off if you can. Rael nodded to himself, his hands flying over the controls. Hang on, Threx. It's going to get rough. Threx looked out the viewport as the dock receded, his emotions a tangled skein of fear and hope. As the Nomad ascended into the starlit vastness of space, he realized that each moment of freedom was a victory in itself, hard-earned and precious. He turned his gaze forward, where unknown stars awaited their arrival, harboring worlds where freedom was not just a fleeting dream but a living reality. As the Nomad sliced through the vacuum of space, the silence aboard the ship was palpable, punctuated only by the hum of the engine and the occasional beep of the navigation console. Threx sat quietly, his eyes fixed on the star-streaked darkness outside the viewport. Rael maneuvered the ship with practiced ease, weaving through asteroid fields and nebula clouds that served as natural camouflage from the prying sensors of their pursuers. Back on Galaxius, Alara dodged through the industrial sector, her steps echoing off the metal grates and concrete. She knew the slavers wouldn't give up easily. Threx was a valuable asset they intended to reclaim. Her comm device buzzed again with another update. Several bounty hunters had joined the chase, enticed by the reward on Threx's head. Meanwhile, aboard the Nomad, Rael explained to Threx the intricacies of stealth travel in space. We're using the gravitational pull of planets and larger asteroids to mask our trail. It's tricky, but it'll keep us off most radars. Threx nodded, his mind racing with new information. He was a quick learner, and under different circumstances, he might have found joy in such knowledge. Now, it was a matter of survival. Here, take a look at this, Rael said, gesturing to a screen displaying a series of complex diagrams and equations. This is a stellar map. We're here, he pointed at a blinking dot, and we need to get here. Another dot, far across the galaxy, glowed softly on the screen. How do we avoid detection? Threx asked, his voice low but eager. By staying unpredictable, random jumps, sudden drops into the lower energy bands of space, things like that. Rael responded, his eyes not leaving the screen. Back on Galaxius, Alara reached the docks, her breath coming in short gasps. She glanced around. The area was swarming with security forces and bounty hunters combing through every ship and cargo bay. Slipping into a maintenance tunnel, she made her way to a hidden hangar, where her own ship, the Albatross, was docked. She fired up the engines, the sound drowned out by the industrial clamor. As the hangar doors slowly opened, revealing the expanse of space, Ilara steered the ship out and set course to rendezvous with the Nomad. In the void, the two ships met near a small, uninhabited moon. The transfer was quick. Threx boarded the Albatross with a brief, grateful nod to Rael. "Thank you," he said, his tendrils glowing a warm blue. "Don't mention it," Rael replied with a gruff smile. "Just keep yourself free, that's thanks enough." With Ilara at the helm, the Albatross resumed its flight. She plotted a course that was less direct but far safer, utilizing the natural debris and magnetic fields of celestial bodies to obscure their trail. "We're heading to the Teron sector," she told Threx, pointing to a cluster of systems on the map that were known for their strict anti-slavery laws and strong protective measures for refugees. As they approached the sector, alerts began to flash on the dashboard. Ships were being stopped and searched at the border. The slavers had extended their influence far and wide, bribing officials to watch for Threx. "We'll need to be smart about this," Ilara mused, her fingers tapping rhythmically on the console. "There's a small station on the edge of the sector run by an old friend. We might be able to slip through there." As they neared the station, Threx felt a mix of anticipation and fear. Each star that zipped past was a step further from his past horrors, and a step closer to a future he dared hope for. The station appeared on the horizon, a beacon in the dark promising a new beginning, or a new challenge. The Albatross glided silently towards the small, nondescript space station orbiting a desolate moon in the Teron sector. Its exterior, battered by meteorite impacts and harsh cosmic winds, belied a bustling hub of activity within, a nexus for those skirting the fringes of galactic law. Ilara adjusted the ship's cloaking frequency, masking their energy signature as they approached. "This station doesn't get many official visitors, mostly smugglers and refugees. We should blend right in," she explained to Threx, who monitored the sensor readouts with keen interest. As they docked, an old figure appeared on the communication screen, his face creased with deep lines of experience. "Ilara, is that you? It's been too long," the figure greeted, his voice a raspy whisper. "Yes, it's me, Joran," Ilara responded with a smile. "I need a favor. We're trying to pass through quietly." "Understood," Joran replied, his eyes flicking momentarily to Threx. "I'll keep the docks clear. Come straight to Base 6. Exiting their ship, Threx followed Ilara through the dimly lit corridors of the station, the walls echoing with the low hum of machinery and muffled conversations. The air was thick with the scent of ionized metal and engine oil. Joran met them at Base 6, his gaze settling on Threx with a curious tilt. "A Yolax, huh? Don't see many of your kind around these parts, especially not free ones," he noted, his tone respectful, yet tinged with concern. "We're heading to a sanctuary world," Ilara interjected before Threx could respond. "But we've got heat on our trail." Joran nodded, leading them through a series of back passages to a secure room filled with various navigation charts and communication devices. "You'll want to avoid the main trade routes," he advised, pointing to a holographic map of the sector. "Take the Ophiuchus path here. It's less patrolled but more hazardous. Asteroid fields and unstable wormholes." Threx studied the route, his mind racing with the implications of each twist and turn. "We can handle a few asteroids," he declared, more to reassure himself than the others. Joran chuckled, handing Ilara a data chip. "This has the latest sensor sweeps of that area. Should help you navigate the worst of it." As they prepared to leave, a sudden alert sounded throughout the station. "We've got company," Joran muttered, checking a nearby monitor. "Looks like a patrol cruiser, probably looking for you." Ilara and Threx exchanged a look. "Time to go," she said tersely. They hurried back to the Albatross, powering up the engines even as the station's outer doors began to close. "Strap in," Ilara ordered, pushing the throttle as soon as they were clear of the docking clamps. The cruiser appeared on their tail, its warning shots flashing past as they accelerated towards the asteroid field. Threx's tendrils flickered with anxiety as he watched the cruiser's advance on the radar. Ilara maneuvered the ship with precision, diving deeper into the field. Asteroids loomed large before them, their surfaces scarred and pitted. The cruiser, less agile than their smaller craft, struggled to keep pace, its bulkier frame grazing against the rocky debris. Almost there, Elara breathed, her eyes fixed on the navigation screen. A wormhole entrance, its edges shimmering with unstable energy, appeared ahead. Hold on. With a skilled flick of the controls, she steered them into the wormhole. The fabric of space stretched around them, a tunnel of swirling colors and distorted light. Emerging on the other side, they found themselves in a sector untouched by the usual galactic traffic, its stars bright against the void. "We should be clear now," Elara said, checking their systems for any damage. Threx let out a slow breath, his body relaxing slightly as the immediate danger passed. "Thank you," he murmured, his voice carrying a weight of gratitude. Elara smiled back. "Let's get you to that sanctuary world. After that, who knows? The galaxy's a big place, and now you're free to explore it." As they set their course for the sanctuary, the bridge of the Albatross was bathed in the soft glow of instrument panels and screens, casting an ethereal light on Threx and Elara as they plotted their course forward. The sanctuary world they aimed for was known as Haven 3, a planet lush with vegetation and protected by stringent anti-slavery laws. It was a beacon for those fleeing oppression across the stars, but reaching it would not be simple. "Next, we'll hit a trading outpost on the edge of the verdant expanse," Elara detailed, pointing at a blip on the map. "We can resupply there and maybe pick up some intel on the current patrols around Haven 3. Threx nodded, absorbing every detail. He had become more than just a passenger. He was a crew member now, learning the intricacies of space navigation and survival. "What should I be prepared for at this outpost?" he asked, eager to contribute more effectively. "It's neutral territory," Elara responded, her voice serious. "But neutral doesn't mean safe. Keep your guard up. There are all sorts who frequent places like this. Smugglers, bounty hunters, refugees. Anyone could be a threat." As they approached the outpost, the space around it was cluttered with a variety of vessels, from sleek starfighters to bulky cargo ships. They docked at one of the less conspicuous ports, and Elara led the way, her demeanor alert. The market area of the outpost was a chaotic sensory overload. Stalls brimmed with alien fruits, mechanical parts, and artifacts from forgotten worlds. Sounds of bartering filled the air, mingled with the aroma of exotic spices and the metallic tang of ionized air. Threx stayed close, his tendrils subtly shifting colors to a muted gray to avoid drawing attention. Elara navigated through the crowds, her eyes scanning for anything out of the ordinary. At a secluded corner of the market, they met with a contact Elara knew only as Rix. The informant was a small, wiry creature with multifaceted eyes that gleamed with cunning. "Elara, I heard you were coming," Rix chirped, its voice a sibilant whisper. "You need the safe routes to Haven 3, yes?" "Yes, and quickly," Elara replied, exchanging a coded data chip for the information. Rix's hands moved rapidly, transferring data to their device. "Be wary," Rix warned as they parted. "There's been increased activity from the Coalition. They're cracking down on refugee movements. Heavily guarded blockades have been set up all around the expanse." Armed with this new information, Elara and Threx hurried back to their ship. Once aboard, they reviewed the data, which included schematics of the blockades and patrol timings. "Looks like we'll need to use the nebula corridor," Elara noted, pointing to a route that snaked through a densely packed nebula, known for its natural electromagnetic disturbances that could scramble sensors. Navigating the nebula corridor was a formidable task. Threx watched in awe as Elara deftly piloted the Albatross through dense clouds of gas and dust, the ship's shields flickering with each collision with stray particles. The nebula seemed endless, a universe of swirling mist and sudden flares of light from hidden stars. But finally, they emerged on the other side, the blockade visible as a series of dark silhouettes against the backdrop of space. "Ready?" Elara asked, her hands steady on the controls. Threx nodded, his body tense. The blockade loomed ahead, a gauntlet they had to pass. Elara increased their speed, heading straight for the thinnest part of the blockade. Alerts began to blare as they were spotted, but Elara kept her course, weaving between the larger ships. Laser fire streaked past, close enough to send shivers down Threx's spine. But then, With a sudden burst of speed, they shot through the final line, leaving the blockade stumbling in their wake. Space opened up before them once again, Haven 3 now, just a short jump away. Threx let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, a mixture of relief and triumph flooding through him. Ilara adjusted the coordinates for Haven 3, her eyes scanning the star chart with a practiced ease. The planet appeared on the navigation screen, its green and blue hues a stark contrast to the cold, dark space surrounding it. "We're almost there," she said, a note of cautious optimism in her voice. Threx nodded, his tendrils reflecting a serene teal, signaling his calm. As they entered the orbit of Haven 3, a series of communications checks commenced. The planet's strict entry protocols required thorough vetting of all incoming vessels, especially those coming from high-risk sectors. Ilara transmitted their credentials and the purpose of their visit, her fingers deftly moving across the console.
"Threx, once we land, we'll need to go through their asylum process. It's detailed, but I've arranged for legal support on the ground," Ilara explained, turning to face him. Threx listened intently, his mind filled with visions of what life on Haven 3 might be like. Their ship descended through the atmosphere, the vibrant skies of Haven 3 welcoming them with swirls of bright clouds. As they approached the landing site, a sprawling complex of buildings surrounded by lush forests came into view. This was the refugee transition facility, where Threx would start his formal application for asylum. After landing, they were greeted by a welcoming committee, led by a tall, slender being known as Administrator Lyran. Her species was native to Haven 3, characterized by their elongated limbs and soft, pearlescent skin. "Welcome to Haven 3, she said, her voice melodious and soothing. "We hope to provide you with safety and a chance to rebuild." Lara and Threx were escorted to the processing center, a large, airy building with walls of transparent material that showcased the verdant outside. They were given quarters to rest after their long voyage, along with a schedule of interviews and assessments that would determine Threx's eligibility for asylum. During the next few days, Threx underwent various evaluations, psychological assessments, medical examinations, and detailed interviews about his past experiences and future aspirations. Ilara stayed by his side, advocating for him with the dedication of someone who had come to care deeply about his well-being. One evening, after a day full of meetings, Threx and Ilara walked through one of the facility's many gardens. The air was fragrant with the scent of alien flowers, and the sound of water trickling from a nearby stream filled the air. "I never imagined such a place could exist," Threx confessed, his tendrils glowing with a soft light that mimicked the tranquil environment. "It's more than just a place, Threx," Ilara replied, looking around at the peaceful setting. "It's a symbol of what we can achieve when we value life and freedom above all else." Their moment of peace was abruptly interrupted by an urgent message on Ilara's communicator. Her face tensed as she read the incoming alert. "It's from the spaceport. A ship registered to the Coalition has just landed. They might be here for you." Threx's tendrils shifted to a stark white, a sign of his rising anxiety. "What do we do now?" he asked, his voice tight with worry. "We need to prepare. We might have to argue your case sooner than expected," Ilara stated, her mind racing through various legal strategies. "But remember, you're not alone in this." The following day, Threx stood before a tribunal, a panel of Haven 3's most respected legal authorities. The room was stark, designed to be intimidating, yet Threx felt a surge of strength, knowing Ilara was right there with him. As the proceedings began, the doors opened, and several Coalition representatives entered, their faces stern and unyielding. They claimed Threx as their property, presenting forged documents and demanding his immediate extradition. Ilara countered with evidence of Threx's abduction and mistreatment, her argument eloquent and fierce. She spoke not only of laws and treaties, but of moral obligations and the spirit of Haven 3's founding principles. The tribunal listened intently, their expressions unreadable. After what seemed like an eternity, they retired to deliberate, leaving the tribunal chambers buzzed with whispered conversations as Threx and Ilara awaited the verdict. The atmosphere was thick with tension, each moment stretching interminably. Finally, the doors to the deliberation room opened,
and the tribunal members filed back into the room, their faces neutral, giving away nothing of their decision. Administrator Lyran stood to address the room, her voice calm but authoritative. After careful consideration of all testimonies and evidence presented, we have reached a decision regarding the status of Threx, formerly a captive of the Coalition. Threx felt his heart rate accelerate, his tendrils shifting through shades of anxiety and anticipation. Alara placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, her presence a steadying force. Lyran continued, "It is the decision of this tribunal that Threx be granted full asylum on Haven 3. The documents provided by the Coalition were found to be fraudulent, and their claim on Threx is hereby dismissed." A wave of relief washed over Threx, so profound that his knees almost buckled. Alara squeezed his shoulder, her smile wide with genuine joy. The Coalition representatives stood stiffly, their displeasure evident, but the ruling was final. They exited the tribunal hall. Their mission failed. "The principles of Haven 3 dictate that we offer refuge to those fleeing oppression and bondage," Lyran added, her eyes meeting Threx's. "Here, you will be safe. You will be free." Threx, overwhelmed by emotions, managed a nod of gratitude toward the tribunal. As they left the tribunal hall, the weight of chains, both literal and metaphorical, felt lifted from his shoulders. Outside, the sun was setting, casting long shadows and bathing the facility in a golden light. Threx and Alara walked in silence, each processing the gravity of the day's events. "That was a close call," Alara finally said, her voice a mixture of relief and reflection. "But it was worth it. You're free, Threx, truly free." Threx looked around, taking in the serene landscape of Haven 3, the alien trees swaying gently in the breeze, their leaves whispering sounds of freedom. "I don't know how to thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You risked so much for me." Alara shook her head modestly. "Seeing you here safe, that's all the thanks I need." As they reached the edge of a small lake, Threx stopped and looked at the reflection of the twilight sky in the water. "What now?" he asked, more to himself than to Alara. "What does one do with freedom once it's finally in his grasp?" "Whatever you want," Alara replied, sitting down on the grassy bank. "Learn, explore, help others. Maybe even help us fight against the trade that once claimed you. The future is a blank canvas, Threx." Threx sat beside her, his mind alive with possibilities. Freedom was not just an end. It was a beginning, a chance to redefine his existence and make meaningful choices. As the stars began to appear in the evening sky, a peaceful silence settled between them, a shared understanding that they had traversed great darkness together and emerged into light. Threx knew the road ahead would have its challenges, but for the first time, he was in control of his destiny.